Hey, alrighty. Hello, everyone. I'm Priscilla. I'm the Digital Repositories Librarian at the University of Waterloo. I use she, her pronouns. My apologies that I'm unable to join you virtually today to answer any questions, but I'm joined today by my colleague Israel Cefrin, Information Technology Specialist and Developer, who is here to answer any questions that may arise during our presentation. So today we're here to talk more about how we adapted an installation of Open Journal Systems, also known as OJS, for internal grant application submission and review at the University of Waterloo. I'll briefly just start by sharing a bit of an agenda for today. So we're just going to chat a little bit about the research landscape at University of Waterloo, which I'll now refer to as UW. The current administration of internal grants at UW, the history of the grant program in OJS, some adaptations that we made to OJS, and OJS for internal grants service development as well. Okay, so I just wanted to preface our conversation by providing you all with a short background on the research landscape at the University of Waterloo. So, as a famous STEM-based university, and by that I mean science, technology, engineering, and mathematics based university, most of our research focuses on topics such as sustainable energy, materials science, nanotechnology, and quantum computing, though our researchers study a broad range of topics that are both STEM and humanities focused. Many of our researchers partner with both industry, not-for-profit organizations, and government funders, both at the provincial and federal levels, to receive funding for their research. However, a portion of the university's budget is also allocated towards the management of internally funded awards, which are mostly, though not exclusively, managed by the Office of the Vice President, Research and International, which I'll now refer to as OVPRI, as that first title was rather a mouthful. All right. So, as many of you know, there is quite a learning curve that's associated with being a first-time user of OJS. So, why are our grant managers so eager to use this system? So unfortunately, there are many pitfalls of our current admin process. So the management of a grant can be quite admin intensive and often involves many layers of email for the review and submission portion of the competition. Grant administrators, complain about having to manually respond to grant applicants, send out review requests, remind reviewers of review requests, resend applications, and I think you get the picture. This results in an intensive amount of email correspondence and a large amount of lost email correspondence in an ever increasing inbox. Many of these messages, as we all know, can actually be automated using OJS. So, recognizing these issues, Israel, who is here today, suggested using OJS for grant applications. So, prior to his arrival in University of Waterloo in 2015, Israel collaborated with the Department of Postgraduate Studies to develop a grant application process using OJS for postgraduate research grants while working at the Universidade Estadual do Rio Grande do Sul, which is also known as UERGS, in Porto Alegre, Brazil. So he then brought this experience working with OJS for grants to Waterloo, where in 2023, Israel and Krista Godfrey, who is the head of digital initiatives at the University of Waterloo Libraries, successfully piloted a grant application process using OJS 3.3 for an internal grant at the University of Waterloo called the Graham Seed Fund. The Graham Seed Fund, geared towards innovations in healthcare-based research, will now be using OJS for 2025 for the 2025 competition. Okay, So during the first pilot of this project, Israel and Krista worked with the grant manager of the Graham Seed Fund to understand what types of customizations would be necessary to implement in OJS to make it more user-friendly for grant submission and review processes. Maintaining the submission and review interface in OJS was, of course, vital, but certain aspects of the system, including action labels such as submission, issues, and journal, needed to be changed so that it could be more easily understood by applicants and grant managers. Additionally, this particular grant manager wanted to ensure that grant applicants could not view the status of the review process as either approved or rejected, as they wanted to send out the acceptance and/or rejection emails to applicants themselves. So in this case, they preferred that the status message in OJS read as assessed. The grant manager also did not want to use OJS for copy editing and layout of grant applications, as this is not typically part of the workflow for internal grant review. And finally, they did not want to disseminate the results of the internal grant using the OJS site, as they had other preferred venues for sharing these results. Okay, so recognizing this unique use case, Israel made several changes to the OJS user interface to support the requirements of this grant manager and grant applicants. So these included the development of a simple CSS layer to be applied to all grant sites at Waterloo. So this is the theming customization using that CSS feature with just a black and yellow kind of top header piece. In addition, we have label changes to the user interface from submissions to proposals, issues to awards, copy editing to assessed, which can all be done using the custom local plugin, which you can actually see here on screen. And the removal of current and archives from the main menu, from the primary menu navigation in OJS. So additional changes to OJS include the removal of the review status as approved or rejected in the UI to assessed, as well as customizations of workflow items, including review forms, email templates, and component areas, which are things that are typically done by journal managers anyways. And then finally, we realized that there may be a need to disambiguate different competitions from one another since they're not being published. So these competitions are disambiguated by assigning the submissions to an award, which is also a submission, using the publication scheduling feature so that grant managers could distinguish previous competitions from current competitions in their OJS kind of queue or dashboard. So after making these changes, we were able to successfully run a round of the Graham Seed Fund using the adapted OJS site, which is very exciting. So as a final note before I move on to our launch, so we used a separate installation of OJS for the grants program, which is separate from our OJS installation that we use for our pre-existing journal hosting program. So our journal hosting program uses an out-of-the-box installation of OJS with all the usual labels and workflows. Okay. So with the successful completion of the Graham Seed Fund using OJS, the OVPRI, or the Office of Research, then selected 4 other grants to pilot submission and review processes. So these included 3 internal SSHRC grants, which is a federal research fund in Canada that provides universities with funding for humanities-based research. And the Light Seed grant, which is designed for the development of small-scale teaching and learning resource projects. So, however, even though this was meant to be kind of a slow rollout, given the ever decreasing number of staff assigned to the administration of grants, the OVPRI decided to partner with the University of Waterloo libraries to offer OJS sites to all internally administered grants across campus in an effort to improve the efficiency and productivity of grant submission and review processes. So in partnership with the OVPRI, we rapidly developed a memorandum of understanding, a service page, and a workflow process to support the implementation of OJS for internal and grant administration processes. So we provide a detailed overview of service provisions in our MOU. Importantly, some of our provisions include that we do not offer custom code or core code customizations to any OJS grant sites. Only customization features that are already available out of the box are available to users. We also don't grant or guarantee 24/7 availability of service and only offer technical support during business hours. And we also don't support grants beyond initial setup and training. Any administrative tasks associated with administering the grant are not the library's responsibility. So a single MOU will be signed by our partners at the OVPRI. However, if another granting unit at the university would like to create an OJS grant site, they would need to sign another MOU with the libraries. In all cases, the service and the MOU would be reviewed at an introductory meeting with grant managers. So our service is also clearly outlined in our OJS sites for internal grants page in the services section of our library site. So this page outlines items such as eligibility criteria, the intake process for the service, and some frequently asked questions regarding OJS for grants. We have also created an intake form for new grant sites, so grant administrators can quickly request a new site as needed. So the intake form includes 16 questions that ask key information about things such as the main point of contact, the title and initials of the grant, online information about the grant and their level, and the grant manager's familiarity with OJS. In all our information disseminated, we require that users provide us with at least 4 weeks notice when requesting a site. So then I will meet with the grant manager and then they discuss their request in greater detail and then build an initial site for them and train them to use OJS if needed. So now that key workflows have been established, our next step is to introduce this new workflow to staff at the OVPRI via a presentation at the end of May. By then, we should be receiving new submissions for grant sites using our intake form. We will also be setting a course for maintenance and upgrades of all of our OJS installations, including OJS grants. We are currently working on Dockerizing all of our OJS installations and will be upgrading to OJS 3.4 in fall 2025 and hopefully to OJS 3.5 in winter 2026. The rest, at least right now, is unknown. As this initiative is still quite new, we are still uncertain as to how much work will be required. The state of the University of Waterloo, along with many universities across Ontario or Canada and even North America, is quite fragile as we face budget cuts and staff shortages. However, by building a solid foundation of preset service standards and clearly communicating our requirements for service, we hope that this partnership will prove successful. And as always, all work is impossible without the support of a wonderful team. So I just want to thank Israel, who's here with us today, Nicola Haralal, who's the project coordinator at OVPRI, and Lauren Bile, the copyright and licensing librarian at the University of Waterloo Libraries. All of them diligently helped me write and review the MOU and other service documents that you see today. So thank you for your time and your attention. You are more than welcome to email me any questions or ask Israel some questions now. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your library publishing forum. Thank you so much.